once upon a time, which I mean 2001, about 25 years ago, almost, there we go. I was building a monitoring solution when I was working at Nestle, and they decided that work should be done at the world headquarters. So they flew my family and I to Switzerland. Now, we were in the French-speaking part of Switzerland, which was lucky for me because I'd grown up, my grandmother spoke to me in French. I took French in school. It was less lucky for my wife. She was born in Spain. She has two brothers adopted from Colombia. She grew up speaking Spanish in her home, but I didn't realize exactly how much of a problem it was going to be until we'd been there for a couple of weeks. And my wife decided to come out and join me for lunch. And she calls me from the car and she says, I think I missed the exit. What was it called? And so I told her, it's Sheb. Sheb. So she calls me 2 more times. Each time she's getting progressively more frustrated, as you can imagine, because she's continued to miss the exit. And after that 3rd call, that was when it finally dawned on me. Now, I need to point out that every language has rules and exceptions. Spanish, the language my wife spoke, has rules and exceptions. French also has rules and exceptions. For those people who don't have a second language or slept through their second language in high school, I'll put it in context for DevOps folks. Before I start an international incident, I am not saying that French is the pearl of spoken languages. I am also not saying that. Back to my story, though. In my brain, I was thinking, Sheb, like, easy. This is what my wife saw. That's literally, thank you, Google Maps, right? Chebres, Chexbres, just like it sounds, right? So today I'm going to talk to you about empathy, specifically technical empathy, because I learned an important lesson that day. I learned that if I am not thoughtful about my design choices, if I do not put myself literally in the driver's seat, I was going to make some very poor design decisions and also have an incredibly uncomfortable lunch date with my wife. So thank you for coming to my talk. My name is Leon Adato. I am a principal technical advocate at Catchpoint. I'm a middle-aged white dude giving a conference talk. You don't need anything else on this slide, except that, yes, I did pick that picture to give you confidence. I know what the hell I'm talking about. I do own that suit. And also you can find me as Leon Adato on social media everywhere. The rest of the slide isn't utterly unimportant. However, what I do want you to understand is that this is an oyster talk. Now, what I mean is I have like 45 minutes, I think. I cannot teach you anything in 45 minutes. In fact, in that amount of time, the only thing I can do is irritate you. Now, the reason I call this an oyster talk is because when an oyster gets irritated, it does one of 2 very important things. It creates a beautiful pearl, or it dies. I sincerely hope I do not irritate you to death, but I figured I would warn you. Instead, what I hope is that I give you just the grain of an idea today that you will then layer over with your own ideas and experiences until what you have is something that is valuable and personal and unique to you. So I learned that day that no matter how simple the interface seems to be to the developer, to the engineer, if regular folks cannot figure it out, you have a problem. This lesson counts or applies whether you're talking about something as simple as elevator buttons or architecture. There's the door. Or operating systems. Who remembers Microsoft Bob? Okay, these are people who have been in therapy. Look around the room, okay? This was an actual operating system. You actually used this. To use the modem, you had to click the phone. It was impossible. It was actually just a horrible, horrible thing. It also applies to cars. For those people, does anyone know what this is? This is a 1972 Maserati Boomerang. It is undrivable because you're constantly over your own arm trying to flip levers and stuff like that. It also applies to street signs. Anybody from San Francisco? This is the 101 turning on a Van Ness. I don't know what they're thinking here. It can apply to furniture. When I saw this picture, I'm like, oh, my ass is not touching that. Like, I would not at all. But for some reason, elevator buttons tend to be like the shiny example. I do not know what you have to be doing to screw up an elevator panel this badly. But, oh my God, right? Closer to home, bad user experience in our applications and services can manifest as anything from a seemingly helpful feature that is maybe a little too persistent, not that we would know anything about that using Windows, or you have documentation that looks like it came straight from the brain of MC Escher. Again, my point is not that these things are ugly, although many of them are. Instead, my point is that an engineer somewhere really, really thought that these things were the right way to go about it, the right design choice. Meanwhile, regular users like you and me are left confused, frustrated, or just plain horrified, right? So, technical empathy. Let's start with the word empathy. It gets a lot of bad press, especially among us, because it offends our IT practitioner, DevOps, Vulcan sensibilities. And the dictionary definition doesn't do much to really clarify it. So I'm going to take a shot at what I mean. Empathy is different than sympathy. Sympathy is feeling the same feeling as someone else has and agreeing with that feeling. Empathy is the ability to see things from someone else's point of view. Person might feel sympathy, but they share empathy. And in tech, unfortunately, we get both empathy and sympathy wrong, sometimes in spectacular fashion. For example, we will apply feeling questions to purely technical decisions. Or we will try to apply empathy and end up sounding awkward or insensitive or both. I heard this. A manager said it after the database team did a drop tables in production. Like they really thought that they were being sensitive in that moment. So what is technical empathy? Well, extending the concept, technical empathy is the ability to see a proposed technical choice from someone else's perspective and be able to identify gaps in UI or UX or flow or end result. So let's get started. I'm going to start with accessibility because putting accessibility first is something that we should all be doing first every single day. Accessibility needs to be baked into everything we do. It's our first design choice. I will accept a close second to security, but that's it. All right? Accessibility issues start when we make assumptions about the user, about how they move through the world. We do not, in fact, all have the same 24 hours in the day. As developers, we might believe that everyone is experiencing our website or application in exactly the same way, that it is a shared experience. But the experience of that same screen or interface or whatever it is decidedly different based on the user's experience of the world around them. Now, I'm not going to belabor this point because, first of all, I only have 45 minutes, and second of all, I'm not an expert in any of this, but a brief rundown is that everything that is on the screen needs to be able to be interpreted by a screen reader. Every image that you have in your app needs to have alt text. Every video needs to have closed captions. Everything that uses a color has to have a colorblind equivalent. And to the best of your ability and the limit of your budget, you need to localize language to within your application. And is that list exhaustive? Hell no. But if your sphincter is already clenching up, thinking about the pushback you're going to get when you go back to the office and ask for this kind of stuff, you've just identified your biggest anti-pattern. And if you're thinking, I could go back and say it, but I know I'm going to hear someone's going to tell me, well, it's a lot of work. I don't know if there's enough demand. Well, there is. Reading it down, there are 430 million people in the world who are deaf and hard of hearing, 11 million in the United States. 400 million people have language processing disorders. In the US, that's 2 million adults. Visual impairment, 245 million with 4 million in the US. Colorblind folks, 350 million worldwide, 12 million in the United States. There are 1.2 billion neurodiverse people on the planet, with 50 million in the United States. Most of us in this room, if we are lucky to live long enough, will experience one or more disabilities in our lifetime. To walk through the world acting as if disability is not part of the human experience is the height of hubris. If someone tells you, well, I'm not disabled, you need to immediately shut them down and tell them, no, you are just not disabled yet. Okay, but you're going to hear, we're already doing some accessibility. Isn't that enough? I want to take a minute on this slide This comes from KubeCon 2023. 3 months before KubeCon, I was part of the Deaf and Hard of Hearing working group, and we put together a set of guidelines on how to make events like this more accessible. And the CNCF ran with it. In 3 months, they brought in a whole host of things to make that place accessible. And a dozen different friends of mine who had never been to a conference before, despite being in tech for decades, came out. Why did they suddenly come out? Because this was the first event that was advertised as being accessible, and they knew it wasn't going to be a complete waste of their time. And yet, even bringing in live captioners, people in another room typing to help people understand, this is what they experienced. The sound feed failed. And so the captioners didn't work. Luckily, there were also interpreters on the floor. So there were multiple methods or modes of accessibility available. We're already doing it. Isn't that enough? Probably not. You're probably not covering everybody because everyone's needs are different. Accessibility is not like adding a feature. It's not even like paying down technical debt or doing a refactor of your code base. Accessibility only works if you bake it into the core aspect of your application. And just like you wouldn't build an application for accountants or a customer order app or a plumbing app without involving actual accountants or users or plumbers, you also can't build in accessibility features without including the people who are going to actually use those features. Which brings me to the next section, assumptions. It is one thing to assume that the people using my accounting application know standard accounting practices. It's quite another to assume that they are in my state, or that they are in my time zone, or that they speak English. But it goes beyond that. We are human. We all make assumptions a lot. But we're also in tech, which means we carry on an entire host of other assumptions that other people, the normies, don't have. If you Google falsehoods programmers believe, you can spend the better part of 2 days just looking through those. For example, we make assumptions about names, all right? William Test, can your application handle it if somebody really puts in a name of user test? Or Christopher Null. I had an app crash on that one. That was amazing. Also, John Wyndham, Parks, Lucas, Bain, and Harris. Where does the middle name go? Where does the first name go? Or are you going to force this person to either pick John Bain or Lucas Parks or John Wyndham or a few different ones that have to merge them all together? J.R.R. Tolkien, may the Silmaril of his soul shine brightly forever. I'm not exactly sure where his first name or last name is going to go or what he would pick. Same thing with Peter Vandermeer. That last one, that's my name. The first name goes on the right. My point isn't these are weird edge cases. My point is this is how people move through the world with something as personal as their name. Can your application handle it? We also make assumptions about time. In 2011 in Samoa, Thursday, December 29th was followed immediately by Saturday, December 31st. There was no Friday in Samoa in 2011. A day in Unix epoch time is always 86,400 seconds, except when it's not. There are leap seconds. There are now negative leap seconds. If you'd like to know why your Linux admin drinks heavily, this is why. We think of time zones as being whole numbers, but no. India's a half. That's fabulous. I do not know what substances were consumed by the people who drew the international date line, but it was powerful shit. We make assumptions about addresses, something as simple as where we live. Can your application handle if somebody lives on 0 Edgemont Road, or -1 Priory Road, or 10 as a word, Post Office Square? There's also apartment 001. Not so hard. I can deal with that, except that apartment 1 is in the same building in a different floor. Gondal. This is my favorite. Gondal 2695. That actually means the town of Gondal, Street 26, Building 95. Once again, these are not weirdo edge cases. This is how a lot of people live their lives. And if your application doesn't accommodate that, that is a choice that you have made. There are more those are technical assumptions. There are more pernicious assumptions that we in DevOps have to deal with. Things about our own attitudes. For example, if I know it, then it has to be simple and everybody must know this. That is definitively not true. We can learn everything we need to know by looking at the data. Look, I'm as data-driven as the next guy. All right? I love my data, but it does not tell the whole story ever. Yes, my experience is both complete and definitive, also known as the white man assumption. I feel like I should sing Allentown every time that goes off, if you're a Billy Joel fan. Sorry. The senior dev who's a senior dev here? Show of hands, anybody? Do you in fact know something that everyone else doesn't know? Like maybe, yeah, occasionally, yeah, but it's not a good assumption to make. If we solve 10% of the problems, we can work out the rest as we go. And this is my favorite, especially because I work in monitoring and observability. Users of our product will automatically understand our jargon, our internal code words, and the special definitions we have for industry standard terms like node or observability or things like that. These are all assumptions that we make in tech every day. And please stop. Just please stop. Next section, questions. Nobel Prize-winning physicist, Dr. Isidore Isaac Rabi, who is also a contemporary of Oppenheimer and a co-religionist, said, "My mother is the reason I became a scientist. Every other Jewish mother in Brooklyn, when the kid got home, would say, 'Did you learn anything today?' Not my mother. So no, Izzy, did you ask a good question today?" That difference, focusing on asking questions, is what made me a scientist. To get to get to the point of technical empathy, you have to meet the users where they are and ask questions, good questions. Or, as my friend Serena Cho, who's one of the product managers at Elastic, says, you cannot sit in a ring smelling your own fart. So before I start, this is not mine. I am privileged to work with some really gifted UI and UX engineers who shared a lot of their observations with me, like how to run an actual UX call. A lot of this stuff is here. I'll tell you right now, again, Leon Adato, if you go to my GitHub, all my slides are there. You can pull this down. I'm not going to go point by point through this. However, there's two things I want to bring out. The first one is that point before I share what that is supposed to do. So if you're talking to a user about a feature, imagine the power of saying, before I tell you what that does, I'd like to know, what do you think is going to happen? You will learn an incredible amount about what users think about your application, about how it flows, about what they expect, just by doing that. The other piece on this slide that you cannot forget is this one. You know nothing. I don't care if you are the only developer in the app. I don't care if you custom crafted artisanal code on every single line. You don't know anything because you're not the user. UX calls are best when they discover the things you don't know. So don't talk with users to validate the upper right corner, the upper left corner of the Johari window. Keep driving down and to the right. All right. If you finish a UX call and you have found out that everything that you thought you did, it's not because you did a good job. It's because you asked the wrong question. Technical empathy means giving your users space to express their experience. It's way too easy to ask questions in a way that bias them. People want to please you. People want to give the right answer. And so you need to take a minute and find a way to ask questions that doesn't automatically signal the answer you want. So instead of saying, is this helpful? Instead say, how do you use that today? How is that working for you today? Was that easy to do? Again, their immediate reactions, well, yeah, sorta, kinda, unless they're contrarian, in which case, no, never. Okay? Instead, how do you feel about that? Gives them space to just be themselves. For a comparison, instead of, did you like this better than that? Simply ask them, just flat out, compare this to that. Tell me what you think about that. Do you think it was good? Again, heavily weighted with the idea of what you want out of them. Instead, so when you think, again, that question, when you think about that process, and again, it would work like this. Don't ever tell the user it would work like this. Ask them how they think it ought to work. Ask them what they think that button is going to do for them. And then when they tell you, say, now, what would you think if I told you it did this. It gives them space to express their ideas about your app. Despite our own personal experiences, we often forget that not feeling heard is the best way to shut down a conversation, right? We know how we feel when that happens. Don't do it to your users. Don't not listen to them. Give them space with phrases like this that allow them to express what they're thinking. There are entire other categories of questions like these. If you're not involved with your UX team, tomorrow is the second best day to reach out to them and start to work with them. Jump on those user calls, get involved, sit in the back and listen. Okay, user UX sessions are best when they help you discover how the users do their work. This is critical, especially for us as DevOps. We don't want to find out how they use our software. That's not important. We want to find out how they do their work. And if they don't do their work with our software, we want to find out why. Why don't they use it? What's in the way of them using it for that feature? And if they do use it, why? What is it that we're doing that helps them accomplish their job? You need to actively solicit your customers, your prospects, your users, and find out what they want. Believe it or not, this comes from SolarWinds. Yeah, them. It's one of the really cool things they did. This space is where anybody basically on the internet can post feature requests and other people can upvote and downvote them and add comments. And you need to be able to do that. In fact, at SolarWinds, not now because it's SolarWinds, but back in the day, the engineers before a sprint would have to justify why the top voted item on the list wasn't part of the sprint. Now, obviously there are reasons, right? Like if the best top feature is buy me a pony, it's not happening. But otherwise, for realistic use cases, they had to go back and say, yes, we know that there's a feature request that has 12,000 votes and it's been open since 2012, and we're not going to get to it because of this or that or the other thing. So putting it into practice. I actually don't know what I'm going to do with this slide, but I couldn't not use it, right? Actually, as I think about it, maybe it's that there is no magic trick to building a good design, right? Like, yes, I used the golden ratio. It didn't fix anything. It's still bad. The only way to make good design choices is to commit to continuously improving and trying out different things. There we go. As developers, it's very easy to confuse UI and UX. Okay, because from our perspective, often it looks like the same thing. So once again, we have to put ourselves in the user's point of view and recognize that their experience of our software is not the same as ours. So here's a couple of examples. I pulled a few, right? You're drafting a message in WhatsApp. You send to the wrong person or the wrong group, or you say something that you wish you hadn't. Not a problem. Delete for all. Delete for everybody is there, right? No one will ever know it happened. Yeah, they'll know. You're going to spend the rest of the day having to answer people, what was it that you just deleted? Okay, not particularly good design choice, not a particularly good user experience, right? So this is awesome. This is an example of dark UX. Dark UX is a term for sneaky user experience tactics that make the experience complicated, or even better, cause users to spend more money than they need to by putting do not use insurance under the national, the pick your country list. I see the raised eyebrows, right? Like, yeah, that's a real thing. That's really on their website. There are priceless, time-sensitive moments that you want to capture and cherish forever. For example, the wedding of your best friend, or when your child takes their first steps, or a street in Denver that doesn't have orange barrels on it. Whatever it is. And when you get this message, the problem is like, okay, fine. Yeah, I know I don't have space to take this picture, but what do I do? Do I have to delete one picture or 10 pictures or all my pictures? Like, how do I move on from this? This is not helpful. Even seemingly common design choices can still introduce friction and frustration. Have you considered being from a country that has multiple names? All right. Am I looking for my country under E for England, B for Britain, G for Great Britain, U for UK. I also saw it listed once under T, the UK. You have to decide, you have to make design choices, but understand the impact of those design choices. Hello? My battery out? There we go. Okay, Fiverr. This is Fiverr's gold star rating. You'd think with Fiverr that they do it. To be honest, this is actually more resource intensive than just having 5-star. Like I'm sure an engineer thought this was more elegant or eloquent, whatever. It uses a ton of more resources to do this on every single page. You're not helping. Okay, some final thoughts. Joseph Brightwriter, who is a gifted UX designer over at Grafana, a friend of mine, says, I'm constantly correcting engineers who say, well, we have to do it like that because users are stupid. Users are not stupid. Your software is something like the 37th UI they have to deal with today. If you create friction just trying to get around the interface, they're not going to learn your app. And they're certainly going to use it to do their work. A user's job is to do their job. A user's job is not to use your software. Using your software is not part of it. Their job requires much, much more complicated things than your set of functions. And your software is there to help them do their work. When we design well, when we do it right, we're helping them complete their task better, more accurately, and completely than they could do without our software. That's what our goal should be every single day. So let's get back to the beginning. What is technical empathy? It's getting out of the user's way when they're trying to accomplish a task. It is identifying and removing friction and making a challenging process easier. And to do this, we have to start with the understanding that the user is the expert in that software and that we know absolutely nothing, and we should ignore that assumption only when it will create a connection with the user that will give them space to share their experiences with us more. Our world is filled with design by committee, design by fiat, design by accident, or worse, except that these were not accidents. Somebody did that on purpose. But on the other hand, not asking users feedback is a choice. It is a bad one. So I mentioned at the beginning that I might irritate you. If you are feeling irritated, now is the moment when you might want to take a minute and reflect on that and see how you can layer your own experiences over that. Meanwhile, I am ready for your questions. Thank you. I also have a present. That QR code, I'll leave it up on the screen. We will ship you a t-shirt. There's like 5 different designs. You're welcome to it. Enjoy. Thank you again.
So I have one question.
Yes.
Why didn't you wear the suit?
I know, right? Because it is like pure polyester. It feels like putting on a suit made of color form. It's real. Walk around like, ew, 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 all the time. So I'll wear it for like videos and things, but you're not the first one to ask. I might have to like get a lining or something to make it wearable. Right? It would be very stylish. Yep. Any other questions? Oh, come on. Let me have it.
All right. Sounds like we're going to do bring it up as an open space.
All right. Not a problem. Oh, yeah.
Oh, yep.
Well, you gave us a lot of bad examples. Do you have some good examples?
Not in my slide deck. No, the bad ones are way more funny. You know what? It's a good point. I should find some good examples. The challenge is not that there aren't any. But this talk, I didn't check my time. I don't know what I came in at, but just covering the bad ones. Sometimes the bad ones is like, scared straight. You're more likely to think harder about it. Ultimately, I think the thing that leads to good choices, again, the good design choice are the choices that help your users. And that population, those needs may be demonstrably different. Again, an accounting app, usability and good UX may look very different from something where it's like a food order entry app online. So it's challenging to say, because otherwise what you get is managers like, well, Google does it. And so we're like, you are not frickin' Google. Shut up. So that may be why I avoided it, but it's a good question. Anything else? Yeah. Shout loud. Yeah, well, that's right. It's like, I'm old. Phil Donahue. It reminds me of Phil Donahue running through the audience.
Where would you suggest someone who has a passing interest in UI or UX specifically go to learn more? I know Google has some entry-level courses, but they're a little long.
So there's a few things that in researching for this, my UX friends gave me like some sites. I'll put them on the Slack later. I'll add those there. Yeah, Google has some sites. Once again, talk to your UX team. because it's not just good UX. One size does not fit all. In fact, one size does not always fit most. All right. What you want to do is talk to your UX researchers and find out what good design decisions your company is making because of the needs and the use cases that you have. However, like I said, I will put some things up there.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank
Give it up
you.
for Leon.